All right, so get ready because today we are diving deep into Pine Bush, New York.
Oh, yeah? Pine Bush.
You know the town that basically put UFOs on the map?
Back in the 80s and 90s?
Especially in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
We've got tons of research here.
Eyewitness accounts.
Yeah, eyewitness accounts and all that good stuff.
The works.
So,
What's crazy is we're not just talking about, like, blurry lights in the sky.
right.
We're talking, like, hundreds of reports.
Yeah.
Detailed descriptions of objects.
Yeah.
Doing things that should be impossible. Even close encounters.
Yeah, I was reading about this one guy
Oh, yeah?
who described a craft shaped like a giant triangle hovering over his car.
Oh, wow.
I mean, come on, that's straight out of Spielberg.
Exactly. And this wasn't like some isolated incident. These
Oh,
reports were coming in constantly,
Yeah.
often from people you wouldn't expect.
Oh, really?
Like police officers, teachers, even a local politician.
Wow. Okay, so buckle up. Because we're going to sift through all of this and try to figure out what went down in Pine Bush.
Let's get to the bottom of this.
All right, so let's rewind the clock back to the 1980s.
Okay.
Set the scene for us. What was happening that turned this quiet New York town into UFO Central?
Well, just imagine this small town, lots of farmland, pretty quiet.
Okay.
Then, boom, reports of strange lights in the sky.
Oh, wow.
They start popping up left and right.
Okay.
People are seeing objects darting around,
Uh-huh.
changing direction instantly, even hovering silently.
Wait, so did these reports all start coming in at once?
It seems like it started gradually.
Okay.
Like a few sightings here and there, and then as the 80s went on,
Yeah.
it snowballed.
Oh, okay.
The sightings became more frequent.
Uh-huh.
The descriptions were more detailed,
Yeah.
more bizarre.
Okay.
By the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Pine Bush was the place to be if you were into UFOs.
So Pine Bush was like the Area 51 of the East Coast.
It really was.
What were some of the things that made these sightings so unique, so different from your typical, I saw a weird light in the sky kind of thing?
Well, the sheer diversity of the reports is one thing.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about orbs or lights.
Right.
People were describing structured craft,
Okay.
disc-shaped triangular,
Uh-huh.
even cigar-shaped objects.
Wow.
And these things weren't just floating around.
Right.
They were performing maneuvers that defied physics.
Defied our understanding of physics.
Exactly.
Okay, so speaking of eyewitness accounts, you were right to emphasize the word concrete.
Yeah.
Those accounts are at the heart of this, and
Yeah.
some of them are incredibly detailed.
Very detailed.
What are some of the common threads that you noticed across these different stories?
Well, bright lights are a constant,
Okay.
often described as intensely bright, changing colors or pulsating.
Okay.
Then there's the movement,
Hmm.
sudden changes in direction, rapid acceleration, hovering silently, and even disappearing and reappearing in a different spot.
Whoa, okay, hold on.
It's like these things were playing tag with the laws of physics.
So I'm trying to picture this. It's a clear night in Pine Bush.
Yeah.
I'm looking up at the sky and I see a bright light
Oh.
moving erratically.
Yeah.
Now I'm intrigued.
You'd have to be.
I'm thinking maybe it's just a plane.
Yeah,
Right?
sure.
What would make me think, nope, this is definitely not a plane?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
One thing that kept popping up in the reports was silent movement.
Okay.
These objects, whatever they were
Yeah.
often described as being completely silent,
Okay.
even when moving at high speeds
Mm-hmm.
or hovering close to the ground.
Right.
No engine noise, no sonic booms, just eerie silence.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
I'm guessing there were instances where these objects got a little too close for comfort, right?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we can't talk about Pine Bush without mentioning those close encounters.
Absolutely. There are reports of people seeing these craft hovering just above their cars.
Yeah.
Shining beams of light down towards the ground.
Oh, wow.
Even reports of being seen near the craft.
Really?
One account that really stood out to me involved a local police officer.
A police officer?
He was on patrol late one night when he saw a large, silent, disc-shaped object hovering near a power line.
Wait, a police officer?
Yeah.
That's not exactly someone you'd expect to be a UFO enthusiast.
Right.
Was he the only one in law enforcement who reported seeing something strange?
Yep, wasn't the only one.
Really?
There were a few other reports from law enforcement officials as well,
Wow.
which adds another layer of credibility to the whole thing.
Yeah, that's true.
These weren't just teenagers out for a joyride.
Right.
These were people in positions of authority who felt compelled to report what they saw.
Right, and that makes it harder to just dismiss these accounts as like hoaxes or an overactive imagination.
You can't just brush those aside.
So we've got lights in the sky, strange movements, Close encounters.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Sounds like Pine Bush was attracting a lot of attention.
It was.
From everyday people and, those who study UFOs.
Researchers, investigators.
Yeah. What kind of impact did that have on the town?
Well, you can imagine the town was abuzz with all sorts of theories. Some people were scared.
Yeah.
Others were excited.
Yeah.
And then there were the researchers and the investigators
Yay.
who started flocking to Pine Bush, hoping to get to the bottom of it all.
I bet those researchers were eager to get their hands on some hard evidence.
Yeah, they wanted proof.
Were they using any specific tools or techniques to try and capture these UFOs?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
We're not talking about grainy photos and shaky camcorder footage.
Right.
These investigators were using some pretty sophisticated equipment for the time.
Oh, wow.
They had radar cameras with telephoto lenses, even electromagnetic sensors,
Oh, wow.
all set up to try and catch these UFOs in action.
So they were bringing out the big guns.
They were serious.
Were they able to get any definitive proof, anything that could settle the debate once and for all?
Well, if only it were that simple. If only it were that simple.
Right.
They gathered a lot of data, but the mystery only deepened.
Okay.
Some radar readings showed objects moving at incredible speeds,
Okay.
making right-angle turns, things that no known aircraft could do.
Wait, right angle turns?
Yeah.
Like instantly changing direction?
Like a flash?
Well, okay, that's not something you see every day.
Not at all.
What about the cameras?
Well, there were photos, yes, but many were inconclusive.
Like, what do you mean?
Lights in the distance, blurry shapes.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's tough to say for sure what they were.
I mean, this was before everyone had, like, high-def cameras in their pocket.
Exactly.
So, but all this talk about objects moving in impossible ways, it really leans into the idea of, like, advanced technology.
For sure.
Some people believe that these sightings could be explained by, like, secret government projects.
Yeah.
Could that be what they were picking up on those radars?
It's a popular theory.
Right.
One source I read even mentioned a specific incident
Okay.
where a group of researchers armed with sophisticated tracking equipment locked onto a bright object moving silently across the sky.
Wow.
They described it as a metallic, disc-shaped object,
Okay.
displaying movements that were far beyond anything they'd ever seen.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
It's pretty compelling.
That's the kind of detail that makes you go, maybe there's something to this whole secret technology idea.
Right.
I mean, if the government was testing super secret aircraft back then, wouldn't Pine Bush be the perfect place to do it?
Oh, absolutely.
Rural, isolated away from prying eyes.
Makes sense.
Right.
And, some people believe those projects might still be ongoing,
Oh, really?
which could explain why sightings continue to this day.
Okay, so let's say, for argument's sake, that some of these sightings were misidentified experimental aircraft.
Okay.
What about the ones that just don't fit that explanation?
Yeah.
The ones where people describe seeing actual beings or experiencing strange phenomena.
Like missing time.
Yeah, like missing time or lost memories.
That's where things get even more intriguing,
Okay.
and where the extraterrestrial hypothesis comes into play.
Okay, so aliens?
One researcher who spent years investigating the Pine Bush sightings
Wow.
was initially skeptical of the alien theory.
Okay.
But after interviewing dozens of witnesses, analyzing radar data, and even experiencing some strange phenomena himself,
Really?
he began to lean towards the possibility
Okay.
that some of these encounters were truly extraterrestrial.
So even a skeptic started to believe.
It seems that way.
That's pretty compelling, but let's be real, there are also a lot of people out there who would say, come on, aliens, that's ridiculous.
Of course.
How do the sources we read address those skeptics?
Well, they acknowledge that skepticism is healthy.
Okay.
After all, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Right.
And while there's a lot of compelling anecdotal evidence,
Yeah.
we haven't found that undeniable, irrefutable proof
Okay.
that would satisfy everyone.
So it's back to the question of proof.
It always is.
But what constitutes proof in a case like this?
Right.
We can't exactly capture an alien spacecraft and put it on display in a museum.
Not yet, anyway.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest challenges in ufology.
Yeah.
The nature of the phenomenon itself is elusive,
Okay.
transient.
But I think the sources do a good job of emphasizing the importance of, like, rigorous investigation.
Oh, sure.
Of applying scientific methods wherever possible, like using radar and other tools to try and corroborate eyewitness accounts.
Exactly.
But what about, like, the psychological aspect?
Right.
Couldn't some of these sightings be explained by people's expectations?
Oh, absolutely.
Or even hoaxes?
That's always a possibility.
Right.
There's always the possibility of misidentification hoaxes or even mass hysteria. One researcher pointed out that the human brain is wired to find patterns,
Oh, yeah.
even where none exist.
Right.
So if people are already expecting to see UFOs, they might be more likely to interpret any strange light or object in the sky as something extraterrestrial.
Yeah, that's true. You know, this reminds me of that time I saw a weird light in the sky.
Oh, yeah?
I was convinced it was a UFO,
Uh-huh.
but it turned out to be a drone with some fancy lights.
Oh, yeah?
I felt pretty silly afterwards.
We've all been there.
It happens.
And that's why it's so important to consider all the possibilities,
Uh-huh.
to be critical of the evidence, and not jump to conclusions.
Okay, so we've got government cover-ups, alien visitors, psychological factors.
A lot to unpack.
A lot to take in.
It really is.
It seems like even with all the data and analysis, we're still left with more questions than answers.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Where do we go from here?
That's the million-dollar question.
How do we even begin to make sense of all this?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
To sift through the noise,
Uh-huh.
the speculation, the misinformation, and try to find those nuggets of truth.
Right.
But even if we can't definitively say, yes, aliens exist, or no, it's all just weather balloons,
Yeah.
there are still valuable insights to be gained.
What kind of insights?
Well, for one thing, cases like Pine Bush highlight the limits of our current understanding of the universe.
Okay.
They force us to confront the possibility
Right.
that there might be things out there that we haven't even begun to comprehend.
Right.
And that's a humbling
Yeah.
and even exciting thought.
Yeah, it is an exciting thought.
It really is.
It's like that feeling you get when you're a kid looking up at the stars and you're like, what's out there?
Right.
Except now we're not kids anymore. We've got all this research and
Exactly.
technology, and the mystery is even deeper.
It just keeps getting deeper the more you learn.
It really does.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring it back down to earth for a minute.
Right.
We've talked a lot about, the mystery, the speculation, the possibility of alien visitors.
Uh-huh.
But what about the tangible effects? What kind of legacy did these sightings leave behind in Pine Bush?
Well, for starters, Pine Bush became a tourist destination.
Really?
Yeah.
I can see it now.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to Pine Bush, UFO capital of the world. T-shirts, alien-shaped coffee mugs.
Absolutely.
The whole 9 yards.
You got it.
Right?
It brought in revenue, created jobs, and put Pine Bush on the map
Yeah.
in a way no one could have predicted.
And not just for the people who live there, right?
Right.
It impacted like the whole UFO community, the way these phenomena were studied, investigated.
It really did.
Did any of the sources go into detail about those changes?
They did. One source highlighted how the Pine Bush sightings led to a shift in ufology,
Okay.
a move towards more scientific rigor.
Oh, okay.
Before Pine Bush, it was mostly anecdotal evidence, eyewitness accounts.
Right.
But the sheer volume and consistency of the reports from Pine Bush
Yeah.
forced researchers to step up their game.
So what did that look like? Did they start using like fancier gadgets, different techniques?
Exactly. The investigations in Pine Bush popularized the use of tools like radar and spectrum analyzers.
Oh, wow.
Researchers realized they needed more than just people's stories.
Uh-huh.
They needed hard data
Right.
to back it up.
Makes sense.
They started using triangulation methods,
Okay.
setting up multiple observation points with cameras and other equipment to try and capture these objects.
From different angles?
Yeah,
Okay, so it was like a scientific awakening
it really was.
for the field of ufology.
Yeah.
Pine Bush pushed them to be more like
Oh,
actual
totally.
scientists.
More legitimate.
Right.
Yeah.
But even with all those advancements, all that data,
We're still left with the mystery.
the mystery remains.
Yeah.
We're still asking the same questions.
Unfortunately, it's true.
Yeah, and some people might find that frustrating.
Of course.
But I think there's beauty in the unknown.
I agree.
It keeps us curious,
Keeps us searching
keeps us pushing the boundaries.
of what we think we know.
You know, that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the desire for a clear-cut answer.
A simple yes or no.
Yeah, a yes or no, a this or that.
Yeah.
But maybe the journey itself
With exploration.
is just as important as the destination.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this whole Pine Bush saga.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that the universe is full of mysteries,
Mm-hmm.
things we may never fully understand.
Right.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
It's that sense of wonder,
Yeah.
that curiosity that drives us to explore, to learn to grow.
I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've explored the history, the eyewitness accounts.
Reinvestigations, the theories, the impacts.
All of it. And even though we haven't cracked the code,
Not yet, at least.
I feel like we've gained a deeper appreciation for, like, the complexity of this phenomenon.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's a lot more than people think.
It really is.
Yeah.
So I hope this deep dive has encouraged our listeners to,
To keep an open mind.
keep an open mind.
To embrace the unknown.
Embrace the unknown.
And to never stop asking questions.
Because who knows, maybe one day we'll finally get those answers we've been searching for.
Maybe.
But until then, the mystery continues.
It certainly does.
And that, my friends, is the beauty of it all.